if you don't have a term limit, God gives you a term limit, right? So you only have so much time here to do things. Because I know that you can't depend on time. You never know that you're going to have time. You're never guaranteed it. I'm always trying to push the ball forward, accomplish things for my residents because I don't know how much time I have.
This episode is brought to you by Kubo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Chat with Mick. And right next to me is City of Santa Ana Councilmember Phil Bacerra.
Well, thank you for having me.
So awesome, you actually made it through the rain from the City of Santa Ana.
It was raining, but I think we needed it, and it looks great out there right now. It's pretty light. So,
It's actually snowing out there.
well, I think that was your film crew downstairs that made it snow a little bit.
Isn't that awesome? It's snowing in downtown LA.
Snowing in downtown, quite a bit of Massachusetts license plates for whatever movie they're filming.
How did you begin in public service?
I've always been interested in government, and so when I went to USC, I majored in urban planning and development with the intention of working for a city in their planning departments. And as my career progressed, I found myself wanting to be more involved with the decision-making process, which, obviously that kind of steers you toward elected leadership, but I still am very involved with planning activities. I help folks that are trying to build housing and make sure that they get their housing projects approved through the cities. But obviously now my trajectory changed and I went more towards elected leadership. And so now I have the honor of serving on the city council in Santa Ana.
Were you always thinking about being a servant leader?
Well, I think just naturally for me, I do take great pleasure in helping others and helping others succeed. And in my business side of things, helping folks navigate through bureaucracy so that they can build housing that, as we all know in California, we really need. And so helping people, whether it's helping a company build that housing, knowing that that housing is going to help people have, live the American dream, I take great pleasure in that. So, and then being as a city council member, being able to help people navigate our own local bureaucracy as far as getting the services that they deserve. They pay their taxes, and we want to make sure that they get excellent services.
Going back to when you were a kid, what activities did you have that made you think maybe I can do greater things? Because I know some public servants that I've talked to said that they've always thought that there's something within them that really wanted to help a great number of people for greater good. Was it like that for you?
I think it evolved over time. I mean, I think I've always wanted to help people. And as things progressed, I was able to find myself in places or positions where I was able to help more and more people. So for me, I've been blessed with those opportunities, whether it's helping as a city staff person, whether it's helping a private business build homes, or whether it's serving as an elected leader and being able to be in a place where I can actually help make decisions or help steer resources to help as many people as possible. And that for me was like a natural current. And so as time progressed, as these opportunities came in front of me, it was wonderful to be able to take those chances and be able to help folks with those opportunities.
We were talking about the structure of this building, the plumbing, where the rooms are situated, where electrical is, and where all the pipes are. Seem to have a background on architecture or planning in general. Were you always like that? Were you building blocks when you were a kid?
I did not have a massive Lego set. I had some, but I don't know that I would call myself a planner as a kid. What actually brought me into the world of urban planning was I was already a student at Chapman University. In fact, I wanted to be a teacher, help folks through that process or through that profession. And my idea was to be a teacher and a coach, maybe coach hockey, water polo, baseball. And as I was doing that, I pulled out an old USC course catalog that my high school counselor had provided me one day. And I was looking through it. I wasn't looking to transfer. I wasn't trying to steer off course from my career trajectory at that time. But as I was thumbing through it, I saw a couple of courses. And as I was reading the descriptions, I went, I don't know why, but that sounds interesting. But, they're not all in one degree, one coursework, right? And so as I looked, it's like, oh no, they're all under the major of urban planning and development. And so at that time, the internet wasn't really much of a help other than just USC's here. If you want to know where we're at this address, but you couldn't apply for anything online. It was very limited in what you could do. So I drove up to LA. I met with folks at USC. It was almost kind of is this real? Is this profession, is this degree, is this major a real thing? And the more I talked with folks, the more I got excited about it. And so when I got back to Orange County, I made the decision that I was going to transfer to USC. USC was an amazing place, and it helped me as far as becoming who I am and getting that degree in urban planning and going on to work for LA Metro, City of LA, a whole variety of other governmental entities, and now working with folks in the private sector to build housing.
When you were looking at the course catalog, what was it that interested you about urban planning?
Planning is something that everybody interacts with. Not everybody interacts with nuclear energy. Not everybody interacts with certain things. But when it comes to planning, when you're walking down the street, design, where buildings are situated, and that sort of standards are housed in the zoning code. So when you say, well, how come the buildings are taller in downtown LA, but they're not as tall in South LA? Well, there's zoning that said, well, let's have the taller buildings located in this area and not so tall in other areas. And that all played into the zoning code. And here were these sets of classes and courses that talked about why and how and what would you do. When you talk to somebody that isn't in the field of planning, it's not like it's a foreign concept. In other words, if I were to ask you, what do you think of that building? You would have an opinion because you can say, well, I like the way it looks, or I think it's too tall or too short, or maybe there needs to be more windows, or maybe the door should be located in a different place. But we all have that intuitive feeling of what makes a place feel comfortable, what makes a place feel safe, what makes a place not feel those ways. Planners will hear a community, hear residents talk about things that they envision in an area or a place, and they go, okay, I've heard what they said. I'm now going to go codify that or put it into the code, and it's going to reflect their vision. But when they read it, of course, it'll sound very wonky and technical, but it'll help steer development to realize that vision.
With urban planning, there's great responsibility because you affect how people live every day. You're affecting how they walk on the streets and how they drive, when and where trash will be thrown away, when water is shut down, the logistics of everyday living.
It's interesting because when it comes to planners, especially in a city government, planners really kind of quarterback, and I think you did a great job of describing those logistics, right? So every city in California has a general plan, and it's, as it describes itself, it's general. So it talks about development, right? But it also talks about where should fire stations be? Where should police facilities be? Where should public works facilities be, right? Water wells, trash facilities, et cetera. And so that plan is the blueprint for how a city functions, how it's going to develop or progress as time goes on. Where should investments be? Are there areas that have parks? Are there areas that don't have parks, that are park deficient? And so you identify areas where there's deficiencies and how you're going to address them. And again, it's a general plan. And within that general plan, there are elements. So circulation, which is fancy for saying transportation, public works, land use, which is really where the planning and zoning comes in. But the planning departments typically oversee those general plans. It lays out that vision for a city, but your elected leadership are the ones that ultimately adopt it. So for us in Santa Ana, we had a general plan that was over 30 years old, and we updated it not too long ago. So over the last 2 years, we updated some of the land use components and the land use elements. So we said there are certain areas in the city that if you're a developer, you should focus in these areas, these will be the areas that the city will make it as easy as possible or as close to easy as possible to develop in. And that plan had gone through a rigorous public review process, public input gathering process, and then ultimately, after it had been reviewed and studied, it made its way to the city council, which we then discussed it, deliberated, and then ultimately adopted it. So now we have what I would say a current general plan, but every city is different and there's no set time frame that you have to update it. But I would say now it's an exciting blueprint for a lot of awesome things that are going to be happening in Santa Ana.
We live in LA County and Orange County, let alone the great state of California, where there are hundreds of cities and towns. All of those cities and towns have different timelines and different key players and lawmakers. And you mentioned working for LA Metro and the city of LA earlier, but now you're in a smaller city, the city of Santa Ana. What differences did you see among those public entities, and why did you end up in the city of Santa Ana?
Well, I grew up in Orange County and I've spent most of my life in Santa Ana. But as a comparison to, say, Los Angeles, Santa Ana is one of the larger cities in California. We are the second densest city in California behind San Francisco. And what I mean by that is we have more people living per square mile than even Los Angeles. So Los Angeles, while there are some areas that are very dense, there are some areas that are very not so dense. And so Santa Ana, 27 square miles, not physically large as far as area goes, but when it comes to development, when it comes to activity, we have a very active city. We've been a part of a lot of key decisions throughout the state. In Orange County, Santa Ana was actually the city that helped incorporate Orange County. So it was its leaders back at the end of the 19th century that came together and said, well, it's really not helpful to have to travel all the way to Los Angeles to do business with our government. We should be doing that more locally. And so you had other cities in Orange County, but Santa Ana was that urban core. And so it took the lead. And with its leadership, you had a lot of work with the state legislature and a whole lengthy process. But ultimately, the city of Santa Ana and Orange County were able to break away from LA County. And so that's why you have Orange County today. But then subsequently, after the voters approved Orange County, they had to select its capital, or what they call the county seat. And so Santa Ana was selected by the voters as the county seat, just as the city of LA is the LA County's county seat.
As a resident of Santa Ana, did you feel a natural beckoning to serve the city where you live?
I did. And, the thing is, Santa Ana is a beautiful city. It's a very vibrant, exciting city. I always tell people it's like a right-sized city. It's not trying to be Manhattan. It's not trying to be LA. But at the same time, it has that vibrancy, that urban fabric. It has walkable neighborhoods. It has so many interesting features that it's a very attractive city. Santa Ana, like any other urban city, it has its challenges. Absolutely. And I think that's what also drew me to wanting to be more involved in Santa Ana, because I felt that I could be part of solving some of those problems, or at the very least, doing what I can to help set up somebody else to eventually make more progress towards solving those problems. I see the potential in Santa Ana. I see this amazing city that definitely has its challenges, but is definitely, with the right investment, the right leadership, can be an amazing city.
You mentioned challenges, and of course, we all know great cities like San Francisco and the city of Los Angeles have problems with homelessness. Even more so now, the city of Santa Ana also has those challenges. What is the city of Santa Ana doing to address homelessness?
Homelessness definitely will not be solved by any one city. And it's really silly when you see certain cities say, well, we've got a plan, or we're going to invest in this one thing. Like somehow it's the magic bullet that will somehow solve everything. And there really isn't. There's a lot of systemic failures, and I would say statewide, that has helped grow the homeless problem. So I think for Santa Ana, what we've done is we and this goes with law enforcement and other personnel, we lead with compassion first. So we see somebody that we've been able to identify as not having a home, we try to offer them services. There's a reason why they're on the streets, because I think for all of us in our lives, we face challenges and we've had to battle over those challenges to succeed. For those that face those challenges, what can we do to change the trajectory of their lives? How do we get them, whether it's taking on the issues that they're facing in mental health or substance abuse? We in Santa Ana have offered services for years and to the tune of over $25 million annually to offer folks services. We have a city shelter, a county shelter. So if you're homeless in Santa Ana and you're genuinely interested in changing your life for the better, we have those resources to help you provide those opportunities. Unfortunately, there are folks that, and this is the way that the laws of California are, it allows folks to reject those services. And so at that point, we, at least I'll say for myself, prioritize our residents. And our residents don't want to walk their kids to school or to the park and have a person that is passed out because of drugs or other things. And they don't want to go into their grocery stores and see somebody that's shoplifting to feed their habits. And so we definitely try to support our law enforcement to make sure that those resources are available. Every city has this multidisciplinary approach and they have their own acronym, right? Ours happens to be QOLT, Quality of Life Team, and they go out with police, resource providers, counselors, and our public works team. So if you have an encampment where you've got folks that have, put together a lot of I'm going to say like trash and whatnot, the public works folks can clean that out. The police and these service providers can work to see what needs to happen. And in our city, if you're on our streets and you've got outstanding warrants, our police officers are going to address you appropriately. We want to help you get off the streets. If you're not interested in that, then you really probably shouldn't be in Santa Ana, because if you want the help, we want to give it to you. We're trying to do what we can to be compassionate, but at the same time, prioritize our residents.
You mentioned quality of life earlier, and we have a growing baby boomer demographic that is now way into their senior life.
Right.
Are there any services for senior citizens?
We have that in Santa Ana. We have senior centers. We have a couple of senior facilities where folks can come. One thing we hear a lot about now is that, as one gets older, sometimes, you have friends that pass away, you start to become more isolated, and that's something you don't want to have happen, right? Whether it's when we get older or folks that are older today, one thing you need to do is stay engaged, right? Stay engaged with other people. And so we try to make sure that our seniors are not isolated. So we have those opportunities for them. And we also have resources as well. I think one thing that's going to be challenging as time goes on is, they talk about that senior tsunami, right? The baby boomers and this massive amount of folks that'll be older. And if you think about the history of just mankind, the fact that, people didn't always live that long, right? Most folks didn't know what it would be like to be elderly because they died much younger, right? So it's a blessing, but also a challenge, right? It definitely requires some very specific care and resources, but Santa Ana has definitely tried to provide those for folks just to, as a city, we're limited in what we can do. We need our partners with the county and the state to provide, but for what we can as a city and provide those opportunities for engagement, interaction, and activity, we definitely try to do that.
In each city, I know safety is of utmost importance for residents. Of course, there are a lot of families in Santa Ana who are concerned about the safety of their children. What are the services for children?
We have some amazing parks. We have a zoo. We also have some non-city partners. We have the Bowers Museum. We have the Discovery Cube. So I know there's a Discovery Cube up in LA, but I'm proud to say the first one was in Santa Ana. So if you're driving down the 5 freeway right at Main Street and you see the big giant cube, that's the Discovery Cube. It's an amazing facility. It exposes kids to science and just all kinds of fun facts and things. The Bowers Museum started off as a local museum, but has blossomed into this museum that attracts international exhibits. Bowers has that level of quality that it warrants coming to LA and other places to say, hey, you've got some amazing museums and places up here, but you'd be missing out not to come to the Bowers. Our zoo has been around for, probably almost 75 years. Santa Ana Zoo holds its own and is a very premier zoo in Orange County. In fact, there's an accreditation that zoos of a certain level and stature have. Not every zoo has it, and Santa Ana just received theirs. So it was a big accomplishment for our Parks and Rec and zoo staff to obtain that. We have those opportunities for kids in addition to with our school district, the Santa Ana Unified School District, because we're a very built out city. We try to partner with the school district to do what's called joint use agreements. So what we try to do is, so if you have a school that's in academic session till say 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, but you've got these beautiful fields on their campuses, but they're fenced off and nobody's using them. How do we activate those so that we can get kids out exercising in a healthy way? And so we've had a lot of those agreements where we work with the school district to open those fields, those basketball courts, tennis courts in those non-academic hours. And so we're able to provide those opportunities for our children.
Speaking of activations and non-academic activities, building a city requires humanitarian services and all kinds of activities for its citizens, but there's also the arts and cultures aspect of it. Are there any festivals or any kind of performances or art programs that are happening in the city of Santa Ana?
I'm glad you asked that, because Santa Ana really, in the early part of the 21st century, really invested in what we call the Artist Village. So right in our downtown, we had this old building. It was the Grand Central, well, now we call it the Grand Central Arts Building, but it was Grand Central. And this building was a variety of uses over the years, but this building is probably close to 100 years old, if not older. And prior to my time, I can't take credit for this, prior to my time, the folks at Cal State Fullerton were looking for a place to locate their graduate arts program. And our leadership at the time engaged with them and was able to get them to locate in that building, which kind of helped spur this artist activity. Some of the buildings that were underutilized were starting to convert into artist lofts, artist studios. And so you have this vibrant arts community. And so every month in downtown Santa Ana on the first Saturdays, all the art galleries, they open up, showcase their work, restaurants offer specials. And if you want to see downtown Santa Ana just on full display of culture and energy, first Saturdays of the month are the best times to come downtown. And I would tell you the absolute best of all the different Saturdays is the first Saturday in November, because that's when we kind of try to combine a little bit of the Noche de Altares, trying to do Dia de los Muertos, all the different altars, beautiful, beautiful altars around our downtown, in combination with what's already happening in the galleries and all these other permanent art spaces. And so you just see so many people downtown, you see so much energy, and it's just an amazing time. Like, if there's ever a time to really experience downtown Santa Ana, that's the perfect one. That arts scene is very vibrant. And as I mentioned, with Bowers, and you have the Wooden Floor, which is a nonprofit that gives kids the opportunity to learn dancing. And you have so many of those, nonprofits. You have the city investing resources and energy into it. And so there's a lot of artistic talent and opportunities. The Orange County School of the Arts, or OSHA, located right in downtown Santa Ana on Main Street, one of the top schools in the entire state of California, definitely one of the tops in the United States. And it's a charter school in Santa Ana that attracts kids from all over Southern California, definitely within Orange County, and you have to audition to get in. But what's amazing about the school is it's very arts focused. And so these kids are, they're putting together podcasts like this, their studio work, and the talent, acting, instruments, dancing, everything. They are just excelling at such high levels. But then at the end of the year, they'll do this showcase where the kids kind of do like a grand finale of performances of what they're doing in each of their shops. But when the kids come out, they tell you where they're going to go to school in the fall, and they're not necessarily just sticking around locally. I mean, these are kids that are going to, Harvard, Princeton, NYU, MIT, then of course Stanford, Cal, very importantly USC. But it's such an amazing school, and it just helps grow the arts. So it's not just simply you're interested in the arts, come to Santa Ana. You've got this talent stream that's already coming through the city, this current of arts and vibrant energy that thankfully with organizations and institutions like OSHA, you're going to see the arts continue to flourish in Santa Ana for many years to come.
With all of those services for the residents, we have the housing, we have programs for senior citizens, for children, we have the usage of parks and revitalizing downtown Santa Ana. How does the city of Santa Ana generate funds for those services?
That's a challenge that we have. And so for us, we're not like some cities where they have that major institution. We don't have a Disneyland. We're not located on the water. So for me, at least personally, one way that I've always felt that we needed to help grow our revenue to fund those resources and those services, we've got to be business friendly. And that sounds very cliche. Everybody says they want to be business friendly, but what does that mean? Does it mean making it easier to locate in Santa Ana, making it more attractive to locate in Santa Ana? One thing that I think we need to start doing more of, because Santa Ana is right in the middle of Orange County. We have Disneyland to the north. We have the beaches, beautiful beaches to the southwest of us. We're in the middle of all that. So if you're a family from out of the area and you want to hit Disneyland, you want to hit Knott's Berry Farm, you want to hit the coast, go to some of the beautiful beaches down there, we're in the perfect location to do that. You don't want to stay somewhere that's too far north or too far south. You want to be in the middle of everything, and that's where Santa Ana is. So we definitely have some room to grow when it comes to our hospitality, and I say that via hotels on the south side of Santa Ana. We have some amazing hotels that tend to be the more top of the line hotels, DoubleTree and some others that I would say, if you're being picky, that's where you would stay. But we should be growing more, because with hotels, you're able to charge what's called a TOT, a transit occupancy tax. And what that means is you don't live in Santa Ana, but when you come to a hotel in Santa Ana and you stay there, you're paying that tax. And that matters to me and to my residents, because that's funding for our resources, our services that we're not paying for. So anything we can do to draw that sort of resource in. I'll give you a good example of that. The city of Santa Ana right now, we bring in about anywhere between 11 and $13 million a year in TOT. And that's with our existing hotels today. But we have a demand for libraries. We have a demand for parks, more infrastructure. We have, believe it or not, we do have some pockets of Santa Ana that we would consider park deficient, and we would love to grow our supply of parks. But in order to do that, we need that funding, we need those resources. I've focused on trying to make it easier for businesses to open, reducing the red tape, making sure that they're not paying or double paying for things that in other cities they're not having to pay those multiple charges, making sure we're competitive when it comes to fees, and making sure that the process is not burdensome. So however we can make it more attractive to locate and operate in Santa Ana. At the same time, we have all these things in Santa Ana that naturally would attract people, but we want to make sure that they don't just come in for a day visit. We want them to stay multiple days. So how do we do that? We need to invest in, or have that investment come towards our hotels.
Speaking of businesses coming in, are we seeing any new restaurants or theaters or anything of that nature?
All the time. In fact, we have a place in downtown. That's the 4th Street Market. And 4th Street Market, there's a lot of cities that are now doing food halls. I would argue that 4th Street Market was one of the first ones in this current trend of having food halls. Our neighbor to the north repurposed a beautiful old packing building, a Sunkist packing building, and it's a beautiful facility. Ours did come first, and we've brought in some amazing restaurants, and those restaurants come in a small incubator space with the hope of growing and eventually becoming a brick and mortar. One of the restaurants that's currently in the 4th Street Market right now is Tayabak, which is a Filipino restaurant that's right in that market. Tayabak. They're in the 4th Street Market. Chef JT started his business during the pandemic. He was helping deliver food to folks, cooking up some meals. He was catering, and as they say, it grew from there. And so we're proud to have him in Santa Ana. We've got some other exciting restaurants that are kind of coming through the pipeline as we speak. The downtown scene has a lot of vibrant restaurants, bars, clubs. It's a great, vibrant place right now. But we also have some old classics. In my ward, we have Antonello. So if you're from Orange County, Antonello is kind of the really, really nice place to take somebody for dinner. That's located right in my ward. And it's such a nice place that Morton's decided they wanted to be nearby. So Morton's actually is walking distance from Antonello, also in my ward. So we have some good restaurants, both very local Santa Ana restaurants. We also have the chains that recognize that they want to be a part of what we have in Santa Ana. We have a lot of great culinary spaces. In fact, one of the things that really attracted me to downtown Santa Ana was my uncle had opened Pop's Cafe, and he no longer owns it. But the thing that I'm very proud of is that the menu has maintained 95% of what he offered back when he opened it up in the 1990s.
You mentioned business incubators to attract businesses into the city of Santa Ana. What business incubator programs are available?
Well, not to keep profiling the 4th Street Market, but one thing that I love that they do, the Chase family, Ryan Chase in particular, who's also a fellow Trojan, Ryan has this concept where you have the 4th Street Market itself, where I was mentioning Tayabak and some other amazing restaurants are located, but you also have these kitchens. So let's say, for instance, you come in and you say, I make amazing adobo, and I think I could probably make so much money selling it, but I have this small kitchen, so I can only cook so much. They offer spaces in these kitchens, these incubator kitchens, and if you're a resident that lives nearby, they'll offer you a discount to utilize those kitchens. So we're trying to, the Chase family is really working to try to help uplift nearby residents to be able to become entrepreneurs and get involved in the culinary scene. So we've had a couple of success stories, and it's great because, some folks will start off maybe in a food truck or maybe, a little igloo where they're selling stuff out of, but here's a chance to, if you're ready to take it to that next level, to have an industrial equipped kitchen where you can cook more quantity as well as quality. They offer that opportunity there.
You've had your chance to get your feet wet in the city planning and city governance. Do you intend to go for the state assembly?
Definitely not anytime soon. When I decided to run for city council in Santa Ana, it wasn't seen as a stepping stone. It was really a genuine desire to improve the city. As I mentioned earlier, we have so much potential. There's so many opportunities that we can't afford to miss, and I want to make sure we take advantage of those. And you can't do that if you've got one eye looking at some other legislative office. I don't envy those that are in Sacramento or Washington, D.C., and I appreciate all of them, even the ones I don't agree with. But I think it's important that for all of us, that some of us do, I guess, what we want to do and what we're supposed to do. I think that's one of the challenges I face with some folks that are in local elected office, whether it's my city or other cities. They say, I want to become a city council member. Okay, great. What's your priority? I want to solve peace in Europe or Asia or Africa. It's like, well, no, you need to focus on the job that you ran for. That there are people counting on you to make sure services are provided and make sure they continue to be provided at a high quality. But if you're busy focusing on other things, you really can't do that. But I will say this, when I first ran for office, I was very narrow in my focus. As I mentioned, I really wanted to help make sure that city services were delivered. But you you can't ignore these other branches of government, because every time in Santa Ana we try to do certain things, sometimes the state either helps us or doesn't help us. In my time on the council, there's been a couple of proposals that have come towards Santa Ana's way that we've had to push back on the state and say, thank you, but no, we can't have that. And so I think that's important, that, again, looking at through the lens of how does it impact our residents and how does it impact our ability to provide those services, those city services for our residents, because there are services that you expect, or it's supposed to be provided for by the county or your county government. And same thing with the state. So it's important that if everybody runs their leg of the relay race the best that they can, then you win. And I think for us, we need to have better partners with the county and the state and the feds. And I think, for folks to get their feet wet at the council, the city council level, is a good thing.
Would you go for the seat of mayorship?
Not anytime soon. And the reason I say that is we have an amazing mayor right now. She's the first female mayor in our city's over 150-year history. And she's doing a great job. I mean, she's been very focused on safety, economic development, and those aren't just things to say because it sounds good. I mean, she's really been doing those things, and each year she's been reelected at larger margins because people are seeing her do that work. And so her predecessor stayed for 2 years and then ran for a higher office. And so, when you ask about folks looking to run for a higher office, that person was clearly looking to move up. Our mayor right now, I think she could easily be in a higher office one day, but I think for her, she's doing a great job now. Plenty of things I want to do in my ward. So Santa Ana has 6 wards. I represent Ward 4. And my ward, if you know where South Coast Plaza is, we're just north of South Coast Plaza. And we have some amazing things going on there. But the thing that was really interesting with Santa Ana was our area is a nice area, but people assumed that my ward was fine. It was taken care of, everything was okay. But we had some challenges that was overlooked by previous leadership. And so I'm a resident of that area. I'm very, very interested in making sure that that area improves and grows and gets better. And so we've been doing a lot to improve public safety, make it an attractive area for economic development. And I love bragging about Bristol Street, which is I call it like the main street of my district. Bristol is the corridor that generates the highest sales tax in all of Santa Ana. So in a lot of cities, it's the auto malls or some other attraction, but Bristol, just as a commercial corridor, garners more tax revenue for the city than any other venue in the city. So I always advocate for making sure that Bristol is clean, safe, attractive, because you don't want to take something that's generating revenue and then not have it be more attractive. We want to see it grow. And in fact, we've got a couple of major developments that were just recently approved over the last year to 2 years that will be coming into that portion of Santa Ana. It's the Bristol related project, and the Segerstroms, who built South Coast Plaza, they own property on our side of the street that they're going to redevelop their property as well. So we've got 2 very exciting projects that are coming in that are going to just be a huge injection of revenue, activity. It's going to be a very, very interesting over the next 10 years to see that portion of Santa Ana transform.
What's your greatest experience so far serving the city of Santa Ana?
Ooh, that's a hard one. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, just helping people, being able to get people the services that they need and plugging them in. And sometimes it's not even like anything dramatic or super mind-blowing. Sometimes it's just someone that was trying to get something done before, kept hitting a dead end, and it really just took somebody in a position that I'm serving in to just pay attention to that person and help break through to get them in front of the person they need to be in front of to get the services they were seeking. And so I have a lot of those instances, and those are the ones that really make it worthwhile, because that's what I signed up to do. I didn't sign up to run for a higher office. I didn't sign up to go off on a tangent. It's making sure that our city delivers these services that people paid for. Like they're not asking for things that they don't deserve. They deserve them because they've invested through their taxes. As a planner, of course, I love the fact that we adopted the general plan for the first time in 30 years. Like, that was wonderful. We've adopted some housing policies during my tenure that I think helped us grow. But it's really, it's not the big things. It's sometimes the big things are an accumulation of the smaller things. And that's what was really more, I think for me, more rewarding, more fulfilling.
What advice would you give to someone who's aspiring to become a public servant?
I like that you used the term earlier, servant leadership, right? If you're just being self-serving, I mean, I think a good politician, not an elected official, a good politician is somebody that doesn't care. If you're able to not care, you're boundless. You can do whatever you want because you don't care. But I think it's for those of us that, and I'll say this very proudly, that really care to pick the fights that you need to pick in support of your residents, to make sure that someone stands up for them. And Anna has had instances where people want to take advantage of our city. And in my time, along with our mayor and some of our council members, we've pushed back and we've defended our city. As I mentioned earlier, we have these proposals that sometimes come in that would really hurt the quality of life in our city. And we've locked arms and we pushed back very successfully. I think it's important that if someone's going to be successful in serving the residents, they have to think of themselves as servant leaders. They have to think of how they're serving others, not themselves, but others. Because trust me, there are times where you take hits for making a decision that you know is right, and you know in your heart it'll make the most benefit for the residents, but it may not be perceived that way. But I don't go to bed nervous at night because I know I'm not trying to play a game or, maneuver in a way that will serve me. I mean, if there's a way to help folks out and strengthen my position, wonderful. But it really is more important to help folks. We as elected leaders in the United States, we have, depending on the position, typically we have term limits. We have a limited time frame. And even if you don't have a term limit, God gives you a term limit, right? So you only have so much time here to do things. And for me, I'm always very impatient. I know that you can't depend on time. You never know that you're going to have time. You're never guaranteed it. For me, I'm always trying to push the ball forward and accomplish. I'm up for re-election in 2026. And people will tell me, oh, you're going to win, you're going to be great. But I don't ever believe that. I always just assume that the worst possible opponent's coming and that they're going to be the greatest challenge. Because if I don't, and like others, if you don't, you become complacent. And then at that point, are you really, truly trying to help folks? Now you're taking your foot off the gas. Now you're not really pressing as hard to deliver. And, if someone gets to that point where they're not ready or continuing to give it their all, they shouldn't be there. They really should hand the baton. I think it's really important for people to recognize that they're there to serve people, not themselves. And if they keep that in mind day in and day out, I think ultimately they'll be successful. I mean, some of our greatest leaders in this country, take it Abraham Lincoln. It didn't really benefit him to politically to fight half the country. In fact, it turned into a civil war, right? So Abraham Lincoln took a lot of personal hits, but ultimately people would say, well, he kept the Union together, and that was a good, noble cause. Locally here in Los Angeles, back in the early 2000s, you had a whole chunk of the city, the San Fernando Valley, that wanted to secede from the rest of LA. And the mayor at the time, James Hahn, fought to keep the city together. Unfortunately for him, a good chunk of his supporters were from the San Fernando Valley, the same folks that wanted to leave. So he had to go to his own supporters and say, I don't agree with you because I don't think it's in the best interest of the city. And he ended up becoming a one-term mayor, but not because he did a bad job, but it's because he did not agree with certain constituents. He did what was right. And I think in time, people pay attention to what he did, at least on that issue. They'll say he did the noble thing. He did the right thing. Yes, it cost him politically, but he did the right thing. And I would say that's true servant leadership, being able to serve your city and say, it's not about me. It's about the city. It's about its residents. am I acting in a way that's good for them, that I believe is good for them, and that will benefit them, not just me, but everybody. And sometimes there are people that don't benefit from your decisions. But again, are you coming at it with a good heart and trying to help everybody, as many people as possible?
How can the residents of the city of Santa Ana make Santa Ana an even better place to live in?
There's a quote I like to say a lot, which is democracy is a participatory sport. In other words, you have to participate. If you just read stuff and then don't do anything, you're not part of the solution, right? And so I think, you know, you don't necessarily have to go to a protest. You don't have to necessarily go paint signs and do that, but it's just being engaged. I like just the simple act of voting. If you look at different cities and the percentage of how many voters turn out during each election, it's not 90%. It's not 95%. Sometimes it's barely 50%. So you're sitting somewhere, half of that room, maybe half that room decided to vote. And that's just one simple way to participate. Now, if there's an issue, say, for instance, we're here in downtown LA, if you have an issue regards to sidewalks, bus stops, public safety, you know, it's important to engage your council member. It's important to be engaged with maybe the police department or city staff. But to just sit there and say, there's a problem and then do nothing about it, the problem's not going to solve itself. And it requires people to be engaged. But I would also say that everybody has a role to play. And so sometimes run for office, or sometimes it's simply just writing a letter. Writing that letter, believe it or not, can be impactful, because if you don't tell people there's a problem, they assume there's no problem. You know, and I got to tell you, I'm very mindful of things and activities in my ward in Santa Ana and throughout the city. But there are plenty of times where someone goes, hey, did you know that there's a problem over at X and Y streets? I go, oh my goodness, no, thanks for telling me. Can you send me a picture? Can you give me a quick description? And a lot of times I'll ask people to email me so that people inside City Hall know it's not just me that sees this. There are other people that genuinely are witnessing this problem or this occurrence. I would just ask anybody to just participate. Like, just participate. At the very least, vote. At the very minimal. But if there's an issue, you know, be engaged. I always ask people, especially if it's in Santa Ana, I go, okay, show of hands, how many of you have downloaded the My Santa Ana app? And what that app is it's just a very easy way. We've all got our phones, but you see a piece of graffiti. You take a picture of it. The phone knows where you're at, so you hit send, and then that request goes to our graffiti removal contractor, who gets it and goes, oh, so there's a piece of graffiti at X and Y streets. Let's go over there and we'll clean it up. There's a pothole, especially after these rains. There's going to be plenty of potholes. Our city, through that app, will repair potholes or fill potholes within 2 days. So if you have a pothole in the street, if you take a picture of it, you hit send, and it geocodes where you're at, our public works staff or their contractor will go out within 2 days, fill that pothole. That's that participation, and it costs you nothing other than maybe a millisecond of time, but you've helped improve the city. If we all come together and do that, it makes for a better city. In fact, I'll just throw one more thing. So I live right on the edge of Santa Ana and Costa Mesa. And so, you know, most people at that part of the city, they can't tell the difference. There's no big stark change that happens when you cross Sunflower Avenue. But when I walk my dog in the morning, I 90% of the time walk through Santa Ana, but every so often we'll walk south and we'll go into Costa Mesa. But because if there's graffiti on the other side of the street, if there's an issue on that side, I've downloaded Costa Mesa's app, and I'll take a picture and send it in. I mean, it's not my city, but it's our community, our collective community. And for me to just, take a couple seconds to say, hey, someone may not have seen this, but there's some graffiti here. You should know. It benefits everybody. And I tell people in Costa Mesa, hey, if you live close enough to Santa Ana, I know you're shopping in our city. I know you're coming to our grocery stores. I know you're coming to our restaurants. Hey, if you see something, just report it. Help us. And that way, it makes it for a better experience for everybody. So participation is the key.
For non-residents, where can we find things to do or go to in Santa Ana?
We have an organization called Travel Santa Ana, and it's funded through some of the hotels. That when you stay at a hotel in Santa Ana, there's a portion of your bill that goes to fund this organization. And they do an amazing job of promoting the city. They have restaurants in Santa Ana that participate in Orange County Restaurant Week, just like you have LA Restaurant Week here. And they highlight some of the fun things to do in Santa Ana, not just your typical attractions, right? I mentioned the Bowers, I mentioned Discovery Cube. We have murals. We have a beautiful murals throughout the city of Santa Ana. Some that are very iconic in Santa Ana and Orange County that are in our city. And there's a portion of their website and sometimes on their social media where they'll show you where those murals are. So you can take a tour, or also some of our neighborhoods, some of our historic neighborhoods, beautiful architecture. Our Floral Park, for example, it's kind of like Hancock Park in LA. It's that, what one would say is old money, but the homes there, a lot of them were built by folks that were major, impactful figures in Orange County history. Travel Santa Ana, I would say, would be the first place to start. I think the more you explore, the more you go down the rabbit hole of all these fun things that you could do in Santa Ana.
So thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. We live in a great state for those of us living in California, and there's so much to do. And once again, like what Phil said, we can go to Travel Santa Ana and the City of Santa Ana website to find out more things to do in Santa Ana. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we'll see you in the next episode of Chat with Nick. Bye!